Hey guys, welcome to the Castle Spear Podcast. My name is John, and today we have Ted Harty from Immersion Freediving back on the show. We are going to be covering all things equalization, especially Valsalva versus Frenzel. Welcome back to the show, Ted.
Well, thanks for having me on, and I'm enjoying it.
Perfect. So why is Valsalva terrible for freediving?
It's terrible. Oh my God, it's so bad for freediving, right? So what I've found is about half the people on this planet equalize via the Valsalva method, and half the people on this planet equalize using the Frenzel method. Now, the people that use the Frenzel method, they weren't taught it. It just happens to be the way that they equalize. So scuba divers typically do a Valsalva. I, as a scuba instructor, taught hundreds and hundreds of students to equalize via Valsalva because for scuba diving, Valsalva works. Frenzel's better, but Valsalva works, right? If you use Valsalva, you're not going to be limited in your scuba diving. And the reason these scuba instructors teach it is because, number one, it works. I was a scuba instructor. I didn't know what the heck Frenzel was, but it's so easy to teach, right? I got a little kid like, hey, Johnny, can you equalize your ears? And Johnny's like, I'm like, okay, can you pinch your nose, Johnny? He's like, I'm like, now blow your nose. And he's like, oh, I'm like, you feel that? And he's like, I'm like, that. Do that early and often. I just taught the kid how to equalize via Valsalva. It's easy. Now, what happens is when you turn into freediving and you start freediving, if you're using that particular method, Valsalva, you are going to absolutely be limited and be unable to equalize past 15, typically maximum of 30 feet. You're going to equalize as hard as you can and nothing's going to happen, right? The only way people that can Valsalva that are freediving, the only way they can get themselves to equalize is they have to I just did a Skype session with someone recently, and he was like, just like you said in the video, because I dive down and then I have to turn around and get my head up. Because once your head is pointed to the surface, Valsalva works. And they equalize and yeah. And then they go back down and kick, and they equalize. It doesn't work. I'm like, what a crazy way to freedive, right? To be constantly like every 7-10 feet, you have to turn your head up and then equalize and go back down. The other way Valsalva works is if you go at a really shallow angle. Right? If you go really shallow, like 30-degree angle, maybe you can get it to work. But I mean, like, come on, we want to go down straight like a laser. So if you want to be able to go down straight like a laser, if you want to be able to equalize effortlessly and easily and instantly, you must be doing Frenzel. Unless you're one of the weird genetic freaks that can hands-free, but that's very people. But typically you got to be doing the Frenzel method of equalization. Now, what's tricky about it is Valsalva. So the way Valsalva works is it takes the air in your lungs, right? So it takes the air in your lungs and you compress your chest, you compress your stomach as hard as you can. Your throat is opening. So you're taking the air that's in your lungs and you're shoving it into your ears. That's the way Valsalva works. And it seems very powerful, right? When you do it, it seems like it generates a lot of force. Frenzel, on the other hand, takes your throat is shut instead of open. Your throat is shut. You take this teeny amount of air that's in your mouth, and then you're shoving that teeny amount of air into your ears, right? So the question that I always get is I've had scuba instructors take my program and they get stuck at 15 feet. I mean, they're like experienced, like they dive for a living and they get stuck in the freediving class. And so the question I get is, why? Why doesn't Valsalva work? The reason it doesn't work is this. Like imagine like the typical scuba diver. Typical scuba diver is head up, feet down, and they descend in that kind of orientation. Your head's to the surface, and they make a slow, steady descent down to the wreck, let's say at 100 feet. Every time they take a breath off that regulator, their lungs are fully inflated. The position that they're in is head up, feet down. When you're head up, feet down, where does the air want to go? It wants to naturally go right where you need it, in your ears. How convenient. What's the size of your lungs? They're fully inflated, right? So equalizing your ears on scuba, it's not really that much different than you equalizing your ears right now, wherever you're listening to this podcast, right? You're in the same body position and your lungs are the same size. Now we've switched to freediving. Now we're inverted. Now our head's down, our feet are up. Where does the air want to go? Towards our feet. Where do we want it? In our head. What's happening to the size of our lungs? Shrinking. At 33 feet, our lungs are half the size they are at the surface. So as a freediver, we're head down and we constantly have less and less air. And that's why techniques like Valsalva that work fine for scuba do not work for freediving. Scuba divers say things like, I just wiggle my jaw, I swallow. I'm like, yeah, because it's way easy on scuba, but it's much more difficult to equalize on on Frenzel. The other thing people struggle with is they don't believe that because the Valsalva is so violent, it seems like it's really strong, but it generates way less force. And the reason I explained that is I said, all right, so if you were to go out to one of those, like a garbage can, or those 45 gallons, hefty garbage cans that are like waist high, and you filled it through water, you filled it at the top of water, and I reached my arms around it, Valsalva is me squeezing that trash can and trying to make the water shoot up really high in the air. I'm going to squeeze that trash can. It's not going to shoot up in the air. It's going to fall off the edge, right? Frenzel is I put my hand in the water and then I squirt, and I can squirt that water across the room that way, because Frenzel takes this little teeny amount of air, but it's just creates so much more pressure. And that's why that method is so much more powerful than Valsalva.
I love it. So how does somebody know which one they're doing?
Yeah, so that's pretty easy to figure out in most cases, right? So what you want to do is take a big breath and then pinch the nose with one hand and then try to, let me back up. So you're going to take a big breath. You're going to put one hand on your stomach, one hand on your nose, and equalize 5 times in a row. Boom, 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 boom. If you're doing Valsalva, you're going to feel that stomach and that chest go each time you equalize. You're gonna feel this pulsing. You're gonna feel this compression, right? The other thing you can do is do it in front of the mirror with your shirt off, and you're gonna see it. For some reason, I don't know why, people are very bad at noticing that. Like I'll see people in class, and I say, all right, let me see if you're doing Frenzel, and they're in the back row, and I see them do 5 equals. I'm 15 feet away from it, and I can see them, boom, boom, boom. I'm like, is your stomach moving? And they're like, nope. What? Right? So I don't understand it. But so if you're not sure, take the shirt off in front of the mirror, then you'll see it. So if you can do the 5 equalizations where you get good clearing in both ears, but your stomach's motionless, your chest is motionless, now that's a really good sign that you're doing Frenzel. Because when you do Frenzel, it's all from the throat up, right? It's all the throat and the tongue that does all the work, right? If you were to watch me do Frenzel, you would see the only thing that moves is underneath my throat. You'd see some movement there, but my stomach is motionless. Like, the thing that measures the earthquakes, the seismograph, like the line, like you hook me up to the seismograph and I do Frenzel, and it's going to be bzzz, perfectly straight line. No, right? So that's how you can tell.
Now, is there any other tips that you wish people just knew that is just not commonly taught out there in regards to equalization?
Yeah. So a bunch, but I would say here's kind of the most important ones. The most important ones. Well, so here's this. If you're listening to this and you have ever come up from a day of diving and felt like there was water in your ear that wouldn't come out, maybe you felt that your hearing was muffled on the boat trip back in, or you notice after 2 or 3 days of diving, it gets harder and harder to equalize. If that sounds like you, then you want to listen, right? If I answer that question to 100 spearfishermen, freediver spearfishermen, and I say, raise your hand if you've ever had any of that, I expect 90, 95 hands to go up. So the reason that's happening is it's not actually water in your ear. Even though, like, I used to happen to me as a scuba diver, I'd be trying to pop the water out and it wouldn't come out. I would take the swimmer's ear, right? You get the Walgreens, this gets the water. I put the swimmer's ear, it still doesn't come out, right? And I'd be on the boat trip home and I would hear that water in my ear, and I'm like, all right, when I go to sleep at night, and I would sleep with that ear down I'm like, I'm gonna get the water out. That's not water in your ear. It's actually blood in your tympanic membrane. That's actually an injury to your ear called baritis media. Right. So if you were to go to the doctor's office, they'd put a scope on that. They could see the engorged blood vessels in there. So the reason that's happening is that's the most common dive injury that happens to almost every free diver, and they don't even know it's an injury. I didn't know it was as a scuba instructor. It happened to me all the time. The way that you make that not happen is you need to equalize early and often. If I ask those same 95 people that raised their hand that said, yes, Ted, my hearing is muffled. Yes, Ted, I feel like there's water that won't come out. And I were to say, when do you equalize? Almost everyone will say the same thing. When I feel the pain or pressure. So you're waiting till you feel that pain or pressure, which means your eardrum is bending in. Like it's actually letting that eardrum bend in, and then you equalize. And then you go kick, and you go, ow. And then you equalize, right? And you do that over and over and over and over and over again. Eventually your body says, hey, you suck at this. You shouldn't let my eardrum bend in that much, right? So what it does is actually engorges the eardrum, the blood vessels with blood, right? To make this fluid, because the fluid's less bendy. It's trying to make that eardrum bend less, right? So because most people wait till they feel that pressure and pain, that's why that happens, right? So it's not water in your ears, blood in your tympanic membrane. So basically, you need to equalize, and it's hard to get people to switch that. you should equalize before you feel the pain or pressure. So all the time, my students, they're diving down. I'm like, yeah, Ted, I said, yeah, that looked pretty good, but you just need to equalize earlier. And they go, but Ted, I didn't need to eat. I'm like, exactly. That's when you're supposed to equalize, before you feel the need. When I do a free dive to 280 feet, I feel no pressure in my ears because I'm equalizing literally boom, boom, this often, every other kick. How could I feel any pressure in my ears? Because I'm equalizing way more frequently than most people are. So that's one of the biggest things I recommend people is make sure you're equalizing before you feel pain or pressure.
So if somebody is still having problems, is there a way they can reach out to you to help you solve their issues?
Yeah. So the most common issue is that I see is that people are doing Valsalva, right? And if you're doing Valsalva, if you're a free diver, if you're a spear fisherman, if you're getting stuck at 15, 30 feet, no matter what you do, it doesn't work. It's because you're doing Valsalva. Now you know. So I've taught over 500 people how to switch from Valsalva to Frenzel. I used to do it via these one-on-one Skype sessions. After doing 500 of those, you're spending 500, if not 1,000 hours saying the same thing over and over and over and over again for like 8 years. At some point I realized there's gotta be a better way to do this. Right. And so that's when I created my online course, Roadmap to Frenzel, which takes that exact step-by-step method, which I've proven and works. And I basically put it into an online course. So definitely you can look in the show notes. There'll be a link to do that. It's really, really cool. The way it works is it mirrors my Skype session exactly. So what I mean by that is I'm going to tell you in the video, I want you to do a certain task. And at the end, I'm going to say, and if you can do it, awesome. You watch video number 2. If you are unable to do that task, don't worry. I've literally seen that hundreds of times. You watch video number 3. So basically you get navigated through all the different videos because I know what problems you may or may not have. So basically it's like choose your own adventure, right? You're gonna get to the end, but you might be watching different videos along the way.
I love choose your own adventure books. That's awesome. I think that's perfect. So you guys, I'll put all the ways that you can reach out to Ted and all the courses and his podcast links in the show notes. Tomorrow we are going to be talking about how we can increase our breath holds. Thanks for being on the show, Ted. Hey, one more thing before you go. If you're on the socials, the Instagrams, the TikToks, the other platforms, follow us, say hi, at Cast and Spear all over the place. That's at CASTANDSPEAR. I'll see you over there. Chat soon.